to a new year, episode 1 for January 2025 of the Blueprint. I'm Adam Hopkins. I'm here with Kurt Feigel, and we just want to get things rolling. And we're going to take a little bit of a different tack. This for January, there's a lot of new things happening. I've got a new administration, and that's going to have an immediate impact on the housing sector. And I thought that would be a great place for us to start. And part of the what kind of prompted this is I'm just going to read this real quick. It's talking about Trump signs executive order to reduce housing costs, but will it work? Now, what is happening here in a flurry of executive orders signed by President Trump? The first 24 to 48 hours have been almost breathtaking, seeing the amount of work that's being put in to kickstart the economy, working on the housing supply, trying to drive interest rates down. And there's a whole slew of things that are going to come out of this. But I wanted to see if we could just chat for a few minutes and kind of bring people up to speed with what we're seeing in the market right now, both in land and on the residential side. And then from a business side of it, things that we can be doing to make sure that we're positioning ourselves as real estate professionals for our clients as we head into the new year.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're up to speed with seeing the litany of, I think we're pushing close to 100 executive orders at this point.
It's like 150,
yeah.
Which is 3 times the last administration, I think's whole term.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a lot.
Yeah, and I think one of them was actually repealing 78 of the economy crushing orders that were put into place 4 years ago, repealing all of those right out of the gate. But the one that to me I found the most interesting from a real estate perspective, I'll just share this with you. This is in the flurry of executive orders signed by President Trump on his first day in office was one that called for all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief that would lower the cost of housing and expand the housing supply. The order also requires agencies to eliminate unnecessary administrative expenses and rent-seeking practices and cut counterproductive requirements that raise the cost of home appliances. The order maintains that regulatory requirements alone account for 25% of the cost of constructing a new home. While the order has attracted attention, at this point it lacks specific details on how to accomplish this mission. However, housing and budget experts say the order may have an impact by just getting the executives of these agencies to focus on the issue. Now, I see several pieces to this puzzle. Obviously, the one that seems to be most focused on by us in the real estate community are interest rates. Now, the president doesn't have direct control over the Federal Reserve Board, but he can certainly influence who is in position there and the practices that they're following. So what we heard at the end of this past year was interest rates as we move into 2025, into the second, third, and fourth quarter. Most people are predicting that we're going to see interest rates. They're going to, at their best, are going to be just under 6%. We also heard that a year ago, and here we are still pushing 7%. So whether that happens or not, that's going to be interesting to see.
There's inflation and then there's inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's inflation. What I mean by that is there's the number the government puts out,
mm-hmm.
and then there's
the real
price of eggs and milk at the store.
That's right.
Which is the real one. And the Federal Reserve's looking at the real one. They're going, it's not what we want. And so they keep it where it's at. And when they lower rates, it doesn't necessarily transition over to mortgages, because that could be a short-term or long-term or some other rate that's not related as much to mortgages. You might see a tiny sliver of percent. We have a saying, and it's not just because we're real estate agents and want to sell houses. We have a saying, the best time to buy a house is now. Because, and my argument, and I have a couple buyers I'm talking to right now, is that if you want to not have to fight with 10 to 20 other buyers, now's a great time to buy.
It is.
And yes, supply issue is a challenge, and that's what a lot of this stuff is aiming to combat and solve.
Yeah.
The thing that I think what we'll see is what Trump is doing in this executive order. You really have to read between the lines. Is there's a lot of stuff that was put in by the last administration for green things, or restricting dishwashers and wood stoves and gas ranges and all of these things that people wanted but now couldn't get, and now you'll be able to get them again. And so I don't think that in and of itself will change the housing market, but or the building market. But what it will do is open up supply for you to be able to get what you want to put in your house, which is nice. The other side of it is that there's a thing called perverse incentive. And so what that means is, well, if I can't get this done this way, maybe if I do this little thing over here, I can get this done. An example would be in the auto market. In the auto market, you'll notice that you might be able to get a Ram cargo van. Well, that Ram cargo van, if you look at the inside, kind of looks like a passenger van. Well, this is weird. Well, that's because they made it a passenger van, shipped it up to the United States. It was built in Mexico, shipped it up to the United States as a passenger van, stripped all the passenger van things out, shipped those pieces back to Mexico, go in the next truck, and they go up here because the tariff on a commercial van was 3 times what it was on a passenger van.
Fascinating.
So there's all these things like that also affect housing. So lumber costs and all these other things, in theory, could go down. And as a result, you'll see more houses being built. Why are more houses not being built? Because the cost to build them. If you're a builder, we really should get a builder in here and talk about this, but if you're a builder, you can't quote out that your house is going to cost $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 to build when you don't know from literally day to day what your materials are going to cost. Your cabinets could cost 3 times as much by the time you get to the cabinet phase of building, or the framing. Your lumber could quadruple in price overnight for no apparent reason. Even though if you've ever driven by a lumber yard, an actual lumber yard out in the middle of nowhere, you're like, boy, they got a lot of lumber here. That's weird.
Right.
And
it wasn't that long ago too. I think it maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, where just to get appliances, like basic kitchen appliances, we were looking, the builders that we were talking to, they were 3 to 6 months out to even be able to get those in stock. So to even know what the pricing was going to be at that point it was such a crapshoot that they couldn't even begin pricing the build outs that they were doing on new construction homes until they got those in to see what the current market value of that was going to be. And same with lumber.
The same is true if you ever seen commercial projects just take a long time. Why is this taking so long? One of the reasons is a lot of those things have a very long lead time. Doors, commercial doors. If you've ever seen the Dollar Tree over here got run into, and it took 6-8 months to get a new door. Well, that's because it takes 6-8 months to get a new door. I mean, commercial projects, they take a long time, and you have to plan out all this stuff and pre-order. And if you, oh my goodness, make a mistake and order the wrong part, look out, because you're going to have to wait a while to get that part in. And so that's just what you're having to deal with. So I think this is going to be great. I think it's going to free up a lot of building and opportunities, which conceivably could lower the price of land. And the reason I say that is if you're building in a development, that doesn't take up land. But if you want to build a house on some land, that does take up land. So if let's say I have 10 acres and I want to build one house. Well, that's one house on 10 acres. If I could build 10 houses on that 10 acres. And so I can build more houses. That doesn't take up as much land. And so the land price is being driven up by financing because people can't find the house they want. So they say, forget it. We'll just go build our own. And the banks now are willing to give land a loan, whereas 2 years ago they wouldn't have. And you're seeing the price just skyrocket. I've got a project I'm trying to work on, and I can't find the spot for it because the land is literally 3 times what it was, 3 years ago. Like, golly, what happened?
Yeah, we had builders for many, many years, probably over 10 years, consistently, that the lots that we were picking up were about an acre to an acre and a half in our area, between $15,000 to $20,000, and it was, that was a good value at that time. You can't find anything like that now. And then also, when you're looking at the cost that's built into the regulation that we've seen, the regulation for the appliances, regulation for all this oversight, and please hear me when I say this, there's a difference between meaningful oversight and just wasteful oversight. To have, we need homes that are constructed in a safe, efficient manner, not sloppy and dangerous. Now, there's a difference between the two. But what this is calling for is to cut back on the unnecessary over-regulation both in construction, both in building supply materials, appliances, all of those things. Like when you're looking at 25% of new home construction is built into dealing with government regulation. Like that is an astronomical amount, especially when you're looking in the suburbs of larger cities. 25% is a massive amount of, in my opinion, wasteful spending for something that doesn't really need to be there. And then one of the other components that was part of this that I really found fascinating was opening up federal land for the purpose of new construction, for helping those home builders that are looking to build large tracts of homes to satiate that need for supply in the housing market. I thought that was an interesting use of federal land too. We haven't seen that I don't know that in our lifetime, but we need that, and we've been saying for 10 years that there's just not enough homes. There's not enough builders building homes. In our area, the handful of home builders that we have, they are either building townhomes because they can stack them on top of each other, which that is, if you're a first-time home buyer, that is your choice. Either a much older home that you can retrofit, upgrade, and make it your own, or it's a townhome. There are no single-family homes for first-time home buyers anymore. They are nice.
I mean, I lived in one for 6 years, and they're not like what they were. I lived in it for 6 years because it was so nice. I'm like, well, I don't have to mow the lawn. I don't have to shovel the snow.
They're talking about townhomes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. But there are limitations. I mean, you don't have your own yard and some of these things that I wanted, and so that's why we moved. But you can get a really nice townhome now. It's not like it was in the in the 90s or in the 80s where you were just kind of crammed in. It was more like an apartment, about 4 of them.
Right.
Now it's an actual house, and they build them pretty solid between them. You don't hear your neighbors. It's nice. So it's not a bad first time home option. But if you want, like to your point, the builder thing, you go out to California or any large metropolitan area. And honestly, I don't really want to see us have a bunch of sprawl because I like our area the way it is. However, you will see a lot more homes closer together, and one builder will build maybe 5 or 6 models of the same home with slight variations. They all look very unique and cute. And Farmington's a good example. You drive through Farmington, and builders have built all those homes in there, and it's a really nice area. You're not like California where you're literally this close from there, where you're literally this close. You could reach out and from your kitchen window and touch the house next door. But
some of the favorites in our area, you're talking about neighborhoods that are conducive to that. So you've got Farmington, Cornerstone is another one, Windhurst is another one. That if you're looking for a home without a lot of yard maintenance, the yards tend to be smaller, the homes are newer. So there's not a lot of deferred maintenance on those, as opposed to you venture into some of the older neighborhoods. It's kind of a roll of the dice depending on who your neighbors may be. Nothing wrong with that, but it's certain neighborhoods. If there is a homeowners association, I historically am not a fan of the homeowners associations.
I'm not.
The downside is you have neighbors who want to tell you what you can do with your property. Not a fan of that. At the same time, it does prevent having sloppy neighbors who have 20 cars in their front yard. That can become a bit burdensome. So the point that I was getting to with what home builders are building right now, lots of townhomes, or they're building apartments. So if you are in the place where you are in a position of wanting to start building your financial foundation, it really makes a lot of sense to start looking at those options for first-time homebuyers to get out of renting from an apartment, because even if it's not your dream home to start, it allows you to start building equity, which you can roll that over as a down payment to a larger home later on. Another strategy that is great for first-time homebuyers is what I would refer to as home hacking, where you can buy maybe a larger home that has an in-law suite or an apartment, and you can either rent that out yourself and treat it like you're in a duplex or like you're in an apartment type situation for a couple of years, and either rent out the main home, or you can live in the main home area and rent out the lower level apartment. And it could be 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. I've seen some with 3 bedrooms on the lower level. And Liberty students, if you're renting those out for $500 to $600 per room to Liberty students, that can quickly help you, not only cover the cost of that higher mortgage, but again, when you're looking at the equity buildup over 4 or 5, 6 years, it's significant as opposed to if you were in an apartment. Every dollar of that is going to the landlord.
Well, and it's called, in the city of Lynchburg, they call it, and probably other places too, an accessory dwelling unit. So if you've got an upstairs and a downstairs, let's say you've got a finished basement, and I know I have a friend that did this and does this. He Airbnbs his basement, and he makes enough that his wife was able to stop working.
Nice.
And so she just raises the kid at home, and they have people that come in. And this is in an area of Lynchburg that I wouldn't have expected this would be a popular thing. And he's got that thing booked probably 80% of the time. So the other option is Liberty students, where you're just a more consistent, group. But there's a lot of good options out there, and that would really offset. I mean, if you could, there's some great websites out there. We can help you, navigate some of that. AirDNA is one, where you can just punch in an address, how many bedrooms, and it'll spit out based on its data from the rentals, and that's the free version. You can pay to have a more comprehensive report. But it'll tell you, hey, well, you could likely make, and your occupancy could be X on this property, and so it's just a really useful tool to, offset that stuff. And so it's tough. It really is tough. I mean, you're looking at, most houses, $300,000 house, you're looking at over $2,000 a month for your payment, and that's not including insurance. So it's expensive. It is. It can be, but there are ways to offset that, and certainly it all depends on where you live. If you live up on the tops of the peaks of Otter, probably not going to get as many Liberty students, but it's not an impossibility. It's just not likely. But there are options. What else is this talking about as far as what does the Trump administration do, specifics that might be in there?
So for HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and USDA, to insure mortgages for single-family homes, the homes must be built to specific energy standards. The 15 Republican state attorney generals are currently challenging those standards in court. So what is expected that these rules would be first on the chopping block under this order. The New Home Builders Association believes that new standards increase the construction costs by $31,000, and the agencies themselves conceded that it would increase the cost of new construction by several $1,000s. So the rescission of these rules could result in significant cost savings for new home buyers. However, the order itself doesn't provide, again, any specific actions. We're 48 hours into this, so it's still they're putting the legs underneath this to see the specifics of what needs to be done. But again, for new construction standards, to eliminate even half of $31,000 is significant, because it wasn't that long ago when you could find new construction 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes on an acre of land for $189,000. Now nothing exists on if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on a half acre. It doesn't exist if it's under $325. It's just not there. But if you're able to eliminate around $30,000, that does put you back under that 300 mark, which, and just in terms of affordability, you are back on par with renting versus buying, and that's really where we want to see.
Well, and I don't think the number's accurate. It says $31,000, and I think that when you look at, that's just material costs, I think. I mean, you got to factor in the fact that it takes longer to build the house to those standards, to have more insulation, spray foam insulation, all these list of things that it has to have. It has to have the more expensive toilet. When the more expensive toilet, maybe it costs more because you have to wait longer to get it in. There's all these things. Again, more perverse incentives, and so it really hurts the buyer in the long run. Now, if you could get around some of those things, or if you didn't have to go with some of those things, it really does open up the door for that. The trick will be, it's hard because when price goes up, it doesn't always go back down. And they talk about inflation. You don't understand something about inflation. It's year-over-year inflation. So if it goes up 10% per year, that's 10%, and then it went up 10% more, and then it went up 10% more. And when it goes back down, That's called deflation, and it rarely happens. Right. Once you have inflation, if that happened, gas would eventually have gone back down to 25 cents where it was back in the 40s. But that didn't happen. Yeah. It went up to 50 cents, and then it went up to 60 and 70 and 80, and now we're paying $3 something a gallon. Yeah. So it just, inflation doesn't work that way. But I think this could have a really good. You're going to see a lot of people, probably builders, who have left the market saying, I don't want to deal with this anymore. Because it's so hard for somebody to get qualification because I built it wrong. I didn't build it right, the right insulation or whatever. Yep. And I can only get this type of loan and not these type of loans. And so I think you open up the door for some pretty cool stuff. Yeah. I mean, this could be really good. Yeah, and this is a 10-point plan, and I agree with you. This is the NAHB blueprint, 10 points to address the housing affordability crisis. And this is the plan is to tame shelter inflation, ease the housing affordability crisis. Currently, we have a nationwide shortage of roughly 1.5 million housing units that make it increasingly difficult for American families to afford to purchase or even rent a home. The National Association of Home Builders provides this 10-point plan to address this. Shelter inflation, rent and home ownership costs is still rising well above a 5% rate. Year over year, to your point that it never comes back down, especially when you have regulation involved, it's only going to increase. So the 10 points are, number 1, eliminate excessive regulation. 2, promote careers in the skilled trades. I tell my son all the time, he is 14 and he's about to turn 14. And we've talked a lot about college, and I have told him on many occasions that the trades are such a wonderful opportunity to be looking at as far as opportunity when he's finished with school. 3, fix building material supply chains and ease cost. The cost of building materials has surged 38% since the pandemic, with a 4-fold lumber price spike in 2021 adding more than $30,000 alone to the price of an average new single-family home. The price of distribution transformers is up 72%. Since 2020. Yeah, there's a local company, Delta Star, makes a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay. And they can't make them fast enough. Yeah. Wow. Number 4, pass federal tax legislation to expand the production of affordable and attainable housing. This could be in the form of to create a new tax credit to produce affordable workforce rental housing geared toward middle-income households such as teachers, healthcare professionals, and law enforcement. We have seen that before. This was around 2005, 2006, I think there was an $8,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers if you lived in the home for a certain amount of time. Number 5, overturn inefficient local zoning rules. Many local and state governments have adopted zoning laws that inhibit home construction and drive up cost. Inefficient land use policies make it harder and more expensive to build. Localities need to rework their zoning plans to increase density and allow more flexibility for developers. Number 6, alleviate permitting roadblocks. So for your permits, permitting delays at all levels of government delay housing projects and raise construction costs. At the state level, the Building Industry Association of Washington estimates that the average permitting delay in the state, you're talking about the delays, in the state of Washington is 6.5 months and costs homebuyers more than $31,000 just for delays. Like that has nothing to do with actual construction of the home. Number 7, adopt reasonable and cost-effective building codes. Number 8, reduce local impact fees and other upfront taxes associated with housing construction. While some impact fees may be necessary to cover the cost of increased public services, so water, sewer, that sort of thing, for new home developments, those fees must be imposed fairly with the cost to the home buyer kept in mind. Number 9, make it easier for developers to finance new housing. And number 10, update employment policies to promote flexibility and opportunity. Building a typical single-family home requires the skills and commitment of 11 to 30 independent specialty trade contractor firms. Subcontracting out large portions of work has consistently proven to keep housing production costs low and provide opportunities for small businesses. But a builder's ability to compete efficiently and optimally
optimally price a home depends on the degree to which overall costs are certain and predictable. The current patchwork approach for determining worker status, employee versus independent contractor, calculating overtime pay, prevailing wages, and documenting employment status creates additional and unforeseen burdens, but also disincentivizes housing production. So that is a brief synopsis of the 10-point plan proposed to address the housing affordability crisis. So that will be just one of many things that are part of the real estate focus for the coming years.
That's so that's about half of those. As you were talking, I was listening to them and saying state, local, state, local.
Yep.
And in a state like Virginia, we have what's called the Dillon rule here. And so essentially, if the state at the state level has not authorized the local level to do something on their own, they can't. So just like, this is what it is, and this is what you're going to do. So it does that a lot of that could help, and a lot of that is federal, and a lot of the states do adopt federal policy because it's just easier. But not always. And so, but even if you did half of those, it could be an improvement, I think. But you know, I guess remains to be seen. Anything at this point, I think could help.
Yeah, I don't think there's any magic wand that's going to be waved and then magically everybody can afford to buy a new home. So, from what we're seeing, the best strategy is to have a strategy that works regardless of what's happening in Washington, D.C. That is, keep your expenses under control, set money aside for a reasonable down payment. Now, we still have down payment options for home buyers. For first-time home buyers, we have zero down loan programs with USDA, and for homes that are in the county, and VHDA for homes that are in the city. Those are for first, if you've not owned a home, those are zero down programs. Now, you do have some fees that are rolled into your monthly mortgage payment. It's an additional form of insurance that's attached to that. It's probably an extra $100 per month. But it does allow you to preserve any savings that you have, to keep that in your savings account to get into a home, with as little as zero down. The second one, which is very popular, is FHA. FHA financing is 3.5% of the purchase price down. And then typically we're seeing between 2 to 3% of the purchase price will account for your closing costs. So if you're looking to purchase a $300,000, whether it's a townhome or a home, you want to budget between $6,000 to $9,000 to cover your closing cost, plus whatever your down payment would be. So if it's a USDA or a zero down loan, that's $6,000 to $9,000 plus your down payment. Right now, the market has begun to calm a little bit, where we actually are seeing instances where the buyers that we're representing, making an offer on a home and asking the seller to cover a portion of their closing costs, and the sellers are actually agreeing to do that for the first time in 5 years. So that's a positive thing. And then for higher priced homes, you still have the typical conventional loans where you can put between 5 to 20% plus down as down payment, and then because of that you'll get a bit of a lower interest rate to work with, so a bit more affordable over the long term. But whether you've owned a home before, you've owned many homes, something that you can do that will really speed up your equity build up when it comes time to pay your mortgage, you can adopt what's called a bi-weekly mortgage payment structure. So instead of once a month, and this is really kind of a side eddy, but over the holidays, I was talking with my son, and I was just thinking through over the year, the 12-month calendar that we're working with. And it made me think of this specifically because this. So you have 12 months, but there are, if you look at it, and we typically think of a month being four weeks per month. Well, 4 times 12 is 48, but we actually have 52 weeks. So there's actually a 13th month that's hanging out there that we just don't talk about. We pretend like it's not an extra month, but it is an extra month. So if you have one payment a month on the first of the month, you're only making 12 payments. But if you do a bi-weekly mortgage payment, so every 2 weeks, so if you get paid every 2 weeks, this is perfect for budgeting in that way. If you just make that mortgage payment every 2 weeks, you're going to be knocking off between 8 to 10 years of your mortgage So instead of a 30-year mortgage, you're looking at different episode for that, but
Go ask the Romans, I guess.
yeah, but it's a fascinating thing just in terms of strategy and budgeting. If you really approach the year as it being 52 weeks and you are making payments every 2 weeks, it's a tremendous financial gain and pickup for you as a homeowner by making your payments in that way. So just keep that in mind as a tip.
And that brings us to what we're always saying as agents is go, one, have a plan. And two, part of that plan needs to be being pre-qualified. You need to talk to a mortgage person, find out what you qualify for, find out all this. Because if your plan is, I'm buying that $600,000 ranch I love. I don't mean ranch home, I mean an actual ranch. Either way. But cool, okay, good. Can you afford that? So you must be a doctor? Or you? Oh, you're not. You're okay. So it's really important that you really plan that out because we want to help you succeed, and part of that is encouraging you to sit down with a mortgage person and find out what you qualify for, find out the best options, that are out there for you, so that you can get the house you want, and that there's no question. Like a good example, we see it all the time: 3 offers, 2 that are pre-approved, 1 that is not. Guess which one gets it? It's one of the people that were pre-approved, guaranteed.
Yep.
And if you're unless it's for some reason a family member that you really want to get this house, it's going to be one of those people.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I mean, how many deals all the time that don't work out because the person couldn't get the financing?
Yeah.
But I wanted that $600,000 ranch. Well, you can't have it.
Yeah.
I want 30 acres out in Forest. I can't have that. So it doesn't matter what I want.
Well, can we walk through? So somebody watching this right now, whether they've purchased a home before or this is their first time walking through the process, and they've decided, a switch gets flipped, and they're like, I think now would be a good time. Can we lay that out for them? So, for instance, to get things started, there has to be a want or a need to go from where you are right now, where it could be living with friends and family. You could have roommates. You could be renting an apartment. You could be living with family. But you just decide, okay, where I am in my life right now, it doesn't make any sense for me to continue doing this. So I would really like to explore whether it's buying, a townhome or buying, my first home where I can just be, on my own and start building that equity and laying that financial foundation for my future. Let's take a couple of minutes and just, walk the viewers through that. So the first thing that we always require before we start going out and looking at homes, before anything else, is to speak with a trusted local lender and get, what we call a free pre-approval. Now, there's a difference between a pre-qualification, it's that monster, between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. The pre-qualification is essentially not worth the paper that it's written on, because you're telling the lender, this is how much I make, I'm guesstimating what my credit score is, this is how long I've been at my current job, how much can I qualify for? That's a pre-qualification letter. So the lender will listen to that and say, based on what you're telling me, this is what you can afford, this is what your monthly payment's going to look like.
Yeah. Well, and the reason you want to get to that guy, get to a local mortgage person that's trustworthy, is one, he's not going to steer you wrong, and two, you may have a lot of problems on your credit that you didn't know were there. And you can find those before it becomes a problem. But find those in a way, it's actually not that hard to fix minor things. And those minor things could bump you up 100 points. And then you're in a really good position to get a good interest rate and get good financing. You might also find out, hey, I've only got $5,000, I need $10,000. And that lets you have a conversation with your spouse and go, I guess we need to stop eating out for a little while. Let's get the savings up. If anybody's ever saved anything, it's a lot easier to, once you hit that 10,000 mark, you really kind of just keep saving. It's like, wow, look, we're doing really good. And it gets really easy to save. Whereas getting to that point is really tough once you break past that.
Is that building momentum?
It is, and but that financing meeting is so key because it opens up all these other avenues of thinking and ways to go that you wouldn't know was there otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And so the difference between a pre-qualification and pre-approval, a pre-approval letter, that is where the lender actually pulls your credit, and they actually verify your employment. And so the main things that they're looking at is they're looking at your credit score. And typically, as long as you're starting from a 620 credit score or above, there are programs available where if you have a credit as low as 580, you can get into a home. But 620 is like the standard baseline, where I believe that's FHA and that type of loan program, where if you're getting a much more competitive interest rate starting at a 620, and then as you move up, the rates are better. So the lower your credit score is, the higher interest rate you're going to be paying, which means your monthly payment's going to be more because you're more of a risk to that lender. So they're looking at the credit score, they're looking at your employment, and then they're also looking at the third thing, which is your debt to income ratio. So from a housing standpoint, they need to make sure that your housing cost doesn't exceed, I believe it's 33% of what your take-home pay is, and your overall housing cost should not exceed 41%. So those are just rule of thumb numbers. So a pre-approval is a lot stronger in terms of when we're presenting an offer on your behalf, because when we submit a pre-approval letter along with our offer to purchase a home for you, the recipient of that, the receiving agent and the seller, understands that, okay, this has already been verified. This isn't just somebody shooting their best guess at what they can afford. A lender has actually pulled the credit report, verified income and employment, and so we know this is a known factor that we're working with. So we know that unless there's something catastrophic with the home inspection, that this is going to be something that should be able to get from going under contract to the closing table approximately 30 days later.
Yeah.
So
I'm really surprised at how fast closings can take place now. It's quick.
Yep.
It just, it's as fast as everyone can get all the pieces moving. Mm-hmm. If you try and buy a house in December, maybe not so fast.
Yeah, because that period.
This is the South. We don't pretend. We still work, but many people pretend to work here in the South.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think December 15th through January 3rd is the official. Maybe that's where that 13th month comes from, is the holiday month.
You need to have that extra 6 weeks or whatever.
Yeah. So just to briefly run through, if you're a first-time home buyer, what that process looks from start to finish. So you start with your pre-approval to figure out what you can afford, and even not just maximum what you can be approved for, but what you're comfortable with. From there, we look at your wants and needs, and we drill down, okay, what are our options? What areas are most useful for you as a home buyer to be looking at? So if you are a Liberty student, or if your children go to JF schools, or whatever your life circumstances may be, that often dictates the radius that we're looking. If you want to be at Smith Mountain Lake, that's a very different conversation than somebody that wants to be closer to the mountains. So we look at your wants, needs analysis, and then we get you set up to where we start looking through all the available homes, and as well as searching for potential off-market properties as well. So when you're working with us, it's not just homes that are coming on the market. We have off-market opportunities that come along all the time. We have a pretty deep list of active and past clients that have other properties that they're in the process of preparing to come to market. So those could be options, as well as just talking with a buyer this afternoon where he's looking for a specific type of property. One of the agents on our team messaged me and said, hey, I've got this property that we bought last year. We're in the process of fixing it up and rehabbing. These are the qualities. It actually had 2 or 3 specific things that are unique to what this other buyer is looking for. And this is probably a month or 2 out from this home being on the market, but this allows us to connect this buyer with the seller. So we can connect you, whether it's off-market listing, it could be a for sale by owner. We have other off-market opportunities that we can get buyers in front of, as well as everything that's on the MLS. So you'll receive those updates real time. It's not just once a day or once a week. It's as they come available, we get those to you. So once you see those, and I always recommend that buyers do a quick drive-by of homes, and because what I've found in my many, many years of doing this, 70% of the homes that you're going to drive by, you're going to scratch them off your list because there's some funky thing going on around that house.
Yeah.
It could be the neighbors.
Could be the neighbor with his 20 cars.
Yeah, it could be the 20 cars. Yeah. It could be the nuclear waste facility in the backyard. It could be the cemetery that's across the street.
I mean, some people might not mind living next to the hospital. Some people might not want to. I mean, there's some beautiful houses on that street. I wouldn't mind it. I think it's pretty over there, but some people might not want that.
Yeah, and the old saying is true that every house that you see is perfect for someone. And it took me probably about 6 months to figure that out when I first got into the business, because I would look at homes through the lens of, would I live here or would I want to be in this neighborhood? And what I quickly realized was everybody's life situation is different. And so I really had to take a step back and start being more empathetic with where someone was in their journey to figure out, okay, how can I serve them in a way that makes sense for them to help take that next step for their journey, for their family. And if they work at the hospital, they want to be close to the hospital. If somebody wants peace and quiet, that home that's across the street from the cemetery, I've had clients that they're like, this is perfect because we don't have to deal with loud neighbors. Like it's quiet and peaceful.
They're not making noise.
They're not making any noise.
Well, the drive-by is a huge one, and it's funny too because it actually works both ways. I remember years ago, before we bought our first house here in the area, and my wife and I, she was looking at these properties out on Hooper Road, which now are worth, I think, 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, and I think they were 150, 180 or something. and I said, Hooper Road? I don't live way out on Hooper Road, and now I live past that on Parraville. It's not even that far. I'm like, why didn't I just drive out there? It wasn't even that far. Yeah. It's worth 500,000 now.
So funny story with Hooper Road. This was my first year in real estate when I was working at Coldwell Banker. This is going to be one of those old head things where I take you back in my day. So back in my day, we didn't have GPS on our phones, so we had to print off MapQuest. And so on my MapQuest, I was meeting with some clients that were in town. I believe they worked at the hospital, and so they were just in town for a Saturday. So we had like 5 or 6 homes that we were going to see. It maybe had been more than that. But this one particular home that we were going to look at, it went down Hooper Road. Now, back then, if you go down to the bottom, there's a creek where the road goes across the top of the creek and then it goes up the other side. So my directions on MapQuest said continue that way and then go up the other side. So when we got down to the bottom of the hill, there was no road. Like there was an actual creek was dividing both sides of that road. And it was just like sandy and rocky. And so we had to stop and get out. And we were actually weighing the pros and cons of driving my old Lincoln town car across across this creek. And then we had to go back, and it took us probably 30, 40 minutes to backtrack to get around to the other side. So that has nothing to do with this, but that
continues on now.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can get across the creek now. Yeah. So, but yeah, just over time.
I'll take that back way home. It doesn't take any time at all, and I can bypass 221. And so it's really nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful back there too.
Yeah, it's a really nice area back there.
Yeah.
But so definitely do the drive-by because it's not as far as you think.
Yeah.
Usually, I wouldn't advise doing the drive-by necessarily at 5 o'clock at night with all the traffic, but any other time.
Yeah, and drive by different times. So a home is going to look a lot different on a Saturday morning than it is at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. So go different times, and but I think also it's helpful to when you look at homes to think of it in terms of how does this fit in my flow with my family, with my weekly routine. So when you've done those drive-bys, the ones that are still at the top of the list, we check in with our buyers. What'd you think? And then we'll make arrangements, usually within 24 hours, to get you in, depending on what the showing requirements are for the home seller, because we want to get you in there as quickly as we can. And then at that point, our role when you're going through looking around the house and inside the home is we're looking for anything that could be catastrophic with the home, because we know that you're going to be envisioning, okay, how's my furniture going to set up? Do I have a family room? Is there enough room for like a baby's room, or is there a workshop, or does it have the garage space that I need, to work on my cars? So what we're looking at while you're trying to place yourself living in this home is taking a quick look. Now, we're not licensed home inspectors, but we can see if there's significant cracks in the foundation, if it looks like there's moisture stains and leaks in the home, if there's old cracking, peeling paint, which is going to get flagged by lots of appraisers, especially if it's a home that was built before 1978, potential lead paint. So those are the type of things that we're looking at. Potential, if there's swaying in the roof, we're looking at the age of the heat pump, the age of the appliances, just things like that that financially can add up. And it's not that they're insurmountable, but you want to have a good understanding of what those are going to generally look like before you make an offer, because an offer for $350 is going to look a lot different when everything has been updated versus a home that's $350 that you're going to have to replace the roof, the heating and air conditioning system is about to go out, all the appliances need to be replaced, and you've got a leaky, wet basement. Those are very, very different things. So before we make an offer, those are things that we'll be looking at while you're going through the home. And then when you find one that ranks on a scale of 10, I always ask my people on a scale of 1 to 10, first of all, can you envision yourself living here? If they say no, then there's no point. We'll keep going. But I will say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rank this home? And you can't use 7. And so if it's an 8 or a 9, we always ask the question, what could make this a 10 for you? And if it's something that maybe we can overcome with having a conversation with the seller, then we'll do that. But we still want to know, because it helps us get a better understanding of what your needs are and your perspective, so that when we're going through and looking at other homes that maybe they're not on the market, that we can better assess, okay, Bob and Mary said they like this. This was a 6. They didn't like this. They didn't like the traffic. They didn't like being on a corner lot. They wanted a bit more privacy. They didn't want to have to redo the cabinetry. So these are type of things that we keep in mind as we're going. And our goal, every home that we look at, we want to move you closer to a 10. And then when we find one that you can imagine yourself living there and you can be excited about, then we'll prepare an offer. We'll walk you through each part of that to explain all the contingencies and provisions that we have in place to make sure that you're protected, such as the home inspection, appraisal, title work, if there's a well and septic on site, the seller will take care of having those tested, as well as termite. And we'll walk you through all of those things and explain, as part of the offer. And then once the offer is accepted, we may go back and forth a few times, but when your offer is accepted, that starts the next phase, which is the contract to closing process. And that's the one, usually will last typically about 30 days. And the easiest way to break this down, there's a whole lot that goes into this, but the next hat that we'll put on is just managing the closing process for you. So just think of it in terms of this way. Week 1, as we order the home inspection, and if there's any repairs that we would consider, and the contract lays this out, if it's a material defect, we can go back to the seller and ask them to address those items. It's not cosmetic, and it's not something that you just have a personal preference, that you just don't like the fact that some of the fixtures are older. That doesn't matter. That's not considered a material defect. A material defect is something that impedes the home's ability to operate and function the way it was designed. So if there are any of those items, then we put a list together, go back to the seller, and we ask them to address them. And generally they do. And if they don't, then we reserve the right that we can walk away, or we can accept it as is. We can ask for a credit to cover the cost of those items. Or if you decide, this is more work than I'm comfortable with, let's keep looking, then we will keep looking until we make sure we find the right thing. So home inspection, week 1, the appraisal, week 2, the title, well, septic, and termite inspections are week 3. And then week 4, we're just making sure all the last minute paperwork with getting the homeowner's insurance set up, your final walkthrough, making sure any repairs are completed, that we have receipts for those, and making sure that your lender has all the paperwork they need to get the closing documents to the settlement office for us to close. That's what we are working toward. And then on closing day, we're there with you to get those closing documents signed and get you your key before you can move in. So that's what it's going to look like, whether it's your first home, second home, or 20, 30, 40 homes later. That's what that process looks like. So hopefully, with everything that is coming through from the new administration, we are, fingers crossed, hoping that it's going to open up more avenues and more opportunities for people to be able to afford to purchase that first home that they've been waiting to get into, or to upgrade to a larger home that their family desperately needs that extra room. So we'll keep watching this and monitoring it and seeing what we can do to be of help in the meantime. But don't get hung up on what's happening in Washington, D.C. If you have questions, be sure to reach out to us, and we can walk you through this process and make sure that we've got everything covered, so that you can, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that we're helping you achieve your real estate goals, and that's what we're here for.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, I guess that winds up the first episode of the Blueprint for 2025. Kurt, I appreciate you being here.
Yep.
And hopefully this was of value to you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us directly. Feel free to leave any comments or questions, whether you're seeing this on YouTube or social media. Always love to hear from you guys. So we'll look forward to talking to you very soon. All right. All the best to you. See ya.
Hold up.